If you haven't seen, there we go. There we go. Thank you. If you would like to go to the DA office website, you can see several videos. And one of them, and an article, a news release about this real estate situation where apparently people were fraudulently going to the property office and changing title to the property, which can happen if someone dies or the property is sold, obviously. But they were doing it fraudulently, and the person living in the house, the senior owning the house, will now be notified. It's a small step forward, but at least this terrible thing of someone taking your house under without your even understanding that someone's in that process, that will provide a pause so that the senior in the house will be notified and has an opportunity to then report that this is fraudulent or otherwise predatory. And I know that last year and the year before, we had several people calling Gray Panthers office to talk about the situation with a home that they had been living in for many years. Their parent or family member died, and they didn't have enough opportunity to make sure they could secure the house before. Well, in one case, they did work it out. So I'll just stop there and just say the DA's office is where you go to report elder abuse. It's where you go to report problems of fraud, white collar fraud, as well as a place that prosecutes criminal activity of the violent crime that we're all more familiar with. So learning more about it and how to use it, I think, is part of our own education. So I'm going to also say that Ms. Price, DA Price, was not able to come today because she had a previous engagement with a group around her campaign in human trafficking. But I believe we'll be able to get her for March or February directly. But what was important about what her office is doing and what she is doing in her election, won the majority. She is now our duly elected district attorney and runs a very large office with many activities, is that almost before she was elected and right after she was elected, a campaign to recall her was already in place. And I felt it was, I know that many of you are very interested to know more about that and what we could do, or just to be alert to this process that's going on, because what are they called? People who are paid to gather signatures for a petition to get this onto the ballot in November are circulating throughout Berkeley. And many of them have no personal knowledge of the DA, only what they've been told by the group that's paying them to gather these signatures. So Rivka Palatnik is a Berkeley resident who has worked on the campaign to elect District Attorney Price, and is now active with the campaign, the counter campaign, to make sure that this recall of someone who has only been in office for, I think, a year now, to subvert the will of the voters. She's a sociologist who formerly taught at Berkeley City College in San Jose State. She's an activist here with the Wellstone Club and with the Berkeley-based Race and Criminal Justice Coalition, a group that we've had several speakers and other similar committees have spoken to us over the last 2 years. So let me take it away and hand it off to you, Rivka.
Okay, thanks very much.
Now I'll highlight you, if that's all right. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I still see you highlighted.
Carol's message to be able to send messages. She's got a message in chat that her name needs to be changed, Carol Morosevich. The iPhone.
You know, I'm going to ask while our guest is speaking that we not interrupt her. Just send me a chat. I'll try to look at it, but I'm handling a little more than I can. So Carol, we'll see what we can do about you. Thank you, Norma. I'm going to mute my.
Okay, may I speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Rivka. I'm trying to make you the center, if that's all right.
Shall I start anyway?
Yeah. Please.
Yes. The gallery view will show me too. Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm going to talk for a while, but I definitely want to have plenty of time for questions and answers because there's so much misinformation out there about DA Price. Incredible lies, distortions, exaggerations, and the media. And some of the media have been just terrible. So it's important not to be swayed by the gross misinformation about DA Price and what she's done or not done. I'll suggest now two good sources you can go to. So one, we call our campaign Protect the Win. And if you go to just protectthewin.org, protect the win, one word.org, that's a good resource, and it has useful information. You can sign up to be on a newsletter from Protect the Win. You can sign up to volunteer, and there's one excellent resource there. It's a handout basically called Fact versus Fiction, which takes on some of the frequent pieces of misinformation that have gotten a lot of publicity. So it contrasts the fiction with the fact. And so that's useful. Okay, so I'm 77 years old. You can see I qualify as gray, and I try to be a Panther when that is necessary. Throughout my life, I've been passionate about two causes. One is anti-racism, and the other is women's liberation, or feminism, as it's more commonly called. My mother was a feminist, and even my grandmother, who was an immigrant from Eastern Europe, a Jewish immigrant who never learned to read, she never was able to learn to read or write, but she was a strong supporter of women getting the vote. But my anti-racist passion is because my relatives were wiped out in the Holocaust. My name, Rivka, is the name of my great-grandmother, who died before I was born, but she was an old woman alive in Eastern Europe and was murdered by the Nazis and a lot of the rest of that family. So I've always cared about social justice and different forms of racism and hatred. And I always followed the civil rights movement in this country closely. I was born here. My parents were born here. But I always felt like the Black struggle was the cutting edge of fighting all forms of oppression, that it was like the burning cutting edge of denial of rights and human dignity and everything else. So I did what I could to be involved with the civil rights movement. I also was very involved with the women's liberation movement, and I always brought the two together. So within the women's liberation movement, racism became a big issue. So I was involved with that. Okay, so I was very influenced by the book, The New Jim Crow, that first came out in 2010. There's been a follow-up edition. So The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And the subtitle is Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness. And she basically made the case that the criminal justice system, what it was doing, especially to Black men, but to other poor people and people of color, that it had become basically the new central force of keeping Black people subordinate. So the new Jim Crow. So several years back, I shifted to focusing on criminal justice reform. I got involved at the county level, at the city of Berkeley level. And so I'm passionate. That's my main passion, criminal justice reform. And I'm passionate about Pamela Price because I first encountered her in the late 1970s when she was a plaintiff in a groundbreaking case when she was an undergraduate at Yale University, which she managed to get to despite being someone in the foster care system. And, she came from a very unprivileged background and got mentored and got to go to Yale. But she was involved with a groundbreaking case against a white male Yale professor, and she experienced gross sexual harassment from him. And it was a very new issue then. And I was then a graduate student at UC Berkeley involved in a sexual harassment case that mixed together issues of racism and sexism. So my group corresponded with her in her case. And then, of course, she lost the case because it came down to her word against a white male prestigious professor. So, but her case was groundbreaking. It helped establish grievance procedures at colleges. It was the beginning of really understanding sexual harassment as an issue of sex discrimination in education. And when Pamela graduated, she came out to go to law school at UC Berkeley, and she became a speaker at our rallies because we were dealing with being accused of the professor that we happened to be organizing against was an Arab man from North Africa. And we didn't choose him as our target. He came up for tenure, and there were like 12 women who complained about his sexual harassment of them. But we ended up being accused of being white women, Zionist women who were out to get an Arab professor. So students of color on campus organized against us. So it was really, really messy. And it was just wonderful when Pamela was willing to speak at our rallies, because she really deflated the idea that this was just a group of white middle-class women who cared about this issue. And so we cooperated that way. And that's how I first came to know and admire her. And she's been a champion for justice throughout her career. I kind of lost touch with her over the years, but when she started running for public office, I reunited, and I worked on 3 of her campaigns. The first time she ran for DA, she ran for mayor, and then this successful campaign for DA. She's the most caring, ethical, wonderful social justice advocate that I know, and I can't stand all the misinformation about how she's unethical. She doesn't care about victims. I don't know anyone who cares more about victims. So that's my passionate connection. Okay, so my topic is who wants to recall DA Price and why? As Betsy stated, the recall movement was developing before she took office, and there were a lot of people who were strong supporters of her opponent who already were planning to try to recall her if she got elected. And some of them were inside her office, so she had to deal with being undermined in trying to change the way things were done. And then outside, there were, well, just to give an example, it's all very political. So the Oakland NACP, I don't know if you read it at the time, sometime back, they came out with a statement saying, we have a emergency situation with crime and the officials aren't doing anything about it. And they specifically had an attack line about Pamela Price. Well, it turned out that Terry Wiley, her opponent in the election, was one of the ones behind that statement. He's in the leadership of the Oakland NAACP. And many of the people who have been quoted in articles attacking her are people who worked hard for her opponent's campaign, including one woman who got a big write-up in the Berkeley Scanner. I'll say a little more about the Berkeley Scanner, which is, you may be familiar with, as a local crime reporting operation. She, produced these basically hit pieces against Pamela, totally based on people who never wanted Pamela to win, strongly supported her opponent, were doing everything they could to undermine her from inside the office. And one of the ones that Emily Ragusa, the editor of the Berkeley Scanner, wrote about at length with many quotes from this woman, had actually colluded when she was working under DA Nancy O'Malley and trying to defeat Pamela Price from getting elected. This woman had actually herself called hit pieces. She worked on hit pieces with police unions against Pamela. She actually herself called them hit pieces, but she became this poor victim of the evil Pamela Price, according to Emily Ragusa and the Berkeley Scanner. So the media has been very unfair and one-sided and destructive against Pamela, based on just promoting the views of people who never liked her in the first place, who are not supporters of criminal justice reform, etc. Then there are the Republicans. So, the Alameda Republican Party has endorsed the recall effort. So some of the people who recalled Chesa Boudin in San Francisco are involved in supporting the recall effort. The big money is coming from, for the recall campaign, is coming from real estate developers, because it hurts their profits if people are concerned about crime. The housing market is affected by concerns about crime. And, there's big tech executives and big real estate developers who are providing big bucks for the campaign, besides, right-wing sources of funding. Okay, but what's happened is they've run a very effective campaign, and they've managed to put out a lot of basically hit pieces, misinformation, attacks, and the media have picked them up. And the Berkeley Scanner has played a really major role. And Emily Ragusa, she used to write for Berkeley's side, but she set up her independent operation and the Berkeley Scanner. And she is very useful in terms of just reporting what crimes are happening. She monitors the police communications. So people appreciate that she does report on crime, but she's always been kind of more in favor of police union views than community reformers. And for some reason, she started doing what she called deep dives on Pamela Price, and unbelievable how one-sided they were. And she's a good journalist, so she knows how to give a little appearance that she's being fair or reporting on what Pamela Price's side says, but it's very clearly biased. And her writing, because she's a rare reporter about crime, gets picked up by other media sources. It's reposted all over social media. So the lines of attack basically come down to that DA Price is responsible for all the crime that's happening, and that the solution, or at least a big part of the solution, is to get rid of her, which is estimated will cost $20 million. So in terms of when if a measure gets on the ballot, when the election would be, it may well be a special election. So they're talking about maybe June or September, a special election, not the November ballot. And it would be more favorable for Pamela's cause if it's on the November ballot, because there'll be a bigger turnout of progressives and liberals than a special election. You know, the passionate people who pursued the recall are more likely to have a big turnout of voters. Okay, so just to give an example, well, so the two things in the campaign by the recall folks are to attack Pamela on anything they can, whether it's true or not, whenever they can. And the other half is we don't hear about her accomplishments. So, you know, if you go to the official website of the Alameda County DA's office, which is, it's ALCODA, so AL for Alameda, CO for county, and DA, so alcoda.org, you can read about the many areas in which she's working and doing good stuff. So people are so upset about crime, street crime, but the DA's office doesn't directly arrest people. You know, a lot of the attacks on her have to do with things the police are responsible for. They have to catch criminals. They have to have enough evidence that a case can be pursued. So I get so frustrated that a lot of the recall case is based on Pamela Price is the cause of crime, when there's no evidence for that. If you look at San Francisco, they recalled Chesa Boudin, and crime has gone up under his successor who helped kick him out. So, you know, the recall folks have been out collecting signatures on recall petitions. And I was just at a farmer's market where they like to get signatures, and they have, you know, big banner, recall Price. And the slogan that they use is reject crime, as if we don't reject crime. But they've managed to succeed with that idea that somehow she is the reason we have the crime wave. And there's so many obvious and less obvious reasons for why we have a lot of crime going on, but she is not the cause of it. Crime was rising before she took office. It's rising in many other places for many reasons: the pandemic, the gross income gap, the lack of social services, the lack of mental health and substance abuse, community services, etc. So the recall folks want to spend 20 million that it would cost for a special election, rather than put it into programs that there is evidence-based reasons for programs that have evidence behind them for reducing or preventing crime. And there's no evidence that getting rid of Pamela Price will reduce or prevent crime whatsoever. So her accomplishments, which the media doesn't like to report on because it's not as sensational as attacks, the accomplishments are so wide-ranging. You know, her office does consumer protection, it does works. She's really boosted up domestic violence resources, and she won a big grant to pursue retail theft, organized retail theft. She's really built up victim services, hired many more people, diverse people who speak different languages to assist victims. She's, she does a lot of things that you just don't hear about, like on gun violence, even though, she's not out in the streets to stop gun violence, but she brought together a whole bunch of different agencies and police organizations and everyone involved in law enforcement. She brought them together to develop strategies and resources for combating gun violence, for combating ghost guns. So she's really done a lot. And, very importantly to me, she ran on a platform to fight the racism built into the criminal justice system. And there's so much evidence and documentation of the unequal application of the law that targets, in particular, Black people, Black men, brown people, poor people, homeless people. And Kamala Price actually is following state laws, because the state has passed laws that say there's been racism in the way enhancements are used to make sentences longer, the way special circumstances are used in charging to keep people in jail for their whole life. She's actually under a mandate from the state law to be really judicious in applying enhancements to charges, and because of the way in which they've been targeted against primarily Black men. So she gets attacked for doing what her job actually is, and then she gets attacked as being responsible for things that are not her job, that she does not have responsibility for, that she does not have control over. So finally, let me just talk about the status of the recall effort. So it's a very confusing situation, because Alameda County, our charter, has rules about how, doing a recall that are very old, very outdated, and in some ways maybe unconstitutional, and are out of compliance with state laws on how you do a recall. So the state laws make it harder to immediately, recall someone who was just elected. So there's various ways in which the state laws try to prevent, the kind of recall. As soon as someone's elected, they're trying to recall her because they didn't want her to win the election. So currently we're under the county laws, and the recall folks have operated under these county laws. But we have now on the ballot in March a Measure B that will say we're going to shift to the state laws, which are less favorable toward, flimsy recall efforts. So there's a lot that's unclear. If that ballot measure passes, will it come into effect immediately? Will it come into effect retroactively? And the recall folks, of course, don't want it to come into effect retroactively. And they say, it's not fair in the middle of their recall campaign under the old rules that the rules would be changed. And, you can understand that feeling on their part. But one complicating factor is that there's one provision of the existing county rules that's quite favorable to protecting the win, our cause. Namely, the county rules say that signature collectors, the folks who collect signatures on the recall petition, have to be registered Alameda County voters. And the recall folks, hire companies that bring in people who are not necessarily county residents or county voters, some of them even out of state, to collect signatures. So we don't have a clear idea of how many of the signatures collected were collected by people who are not Alameda County registered voters, but those would be eliminated if the signatures have to be verified before it can become a ballot measure. They have to have enough signatures that are verified. So if the signatures of collected by people who are not Alameda County voters are thrown out, that's going to throw out a bunch of the signatures. So we don't know whether they'll have enough. We don't know which rules will apply at what point. So both sides are threatening legal action, depending on what rulings come down about the rules for the recall. The registrar of voters under the old rules is supposed to verify the signatures within 10 days. And the registrar has said there's no way he can do the verifying of the signatures in 10 days because the population of Alameda County has grown substantially since the old rules were developed. So the whole situation is a little bit up in the air. The recall folks have been saying they have enough signatures now under the old rules, because the new rules would require more signatures than the old rules. And they've been saying for a while that they're going to turn in their signatures for verification. So first they were going to do it by January 1st, then by January 30th. Now they're saying in a few weeks, and the deadline is March 5th, which is also the date of the primary election that includes Measure B, to change the rules. So on the one hand, they're kind of saying they already have enough signatures, but they're still collecting signatures. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. So I think I'll stop there and take questions. Maria has a hand up.
Maria, you're up first.
Is she muted?
I'm going to ask her to unmute. She has the capacity to unmute herself. There we go. First question up from Maria.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your presence here and absolutely every word that you spoke. When Pamela came to speak to us at the Gray Panthers meeting, I immediately knew she was the real deal. And we need that. And, what we're facing here, in my humble opinion, is pretty systemic. This is all over the gaslighting, the Trump stealing, and the very people that are trying to recall her are literally the cause of the problems they're accusing her of. So I am very sorry, but I know we must stop this from happening, because even just in terms of democracy, how dare they? How dare they just take it after it was, achieved fair and squarely? So I just thank you for the rational data facts. And I also took the opportunity of trying to discuss this with a gentleman that was collecting signatures, and it was all BS. I mean, it was all like what, again, we've heard, why do we like Trump? Well, for this. And of course, it's not true. Or why didn't we like Obama? Because he's going to take our guns away. It's all emotional fear and divisive, which is why I really hope, and I thank Gray Panthers and Betsy and all of us, we must come together, and I support you wholeheartedly and thoroughly. So thank you.
Thank you. If you should want to volunteer to help, you can go to the protectthewin.org and sign up to volunteer.
All right, I'd be happy to help. Yeah, I'd be happy to, because we need the real deal. The power and the control, the greed, the cruelty, it's just absurd. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you
Thank
want to
you.
say a little more, Rivka, about what you would be volunteering, what people would be volunteering to do, what it might involve?
Sure. So, one thing we still need is they are still collecting signatures in some places. So we send out teams, ideally at least 3 people, because you can get harassed by the recall folks, but we send out teams to the places that we know they're collecting signatures, and we have literature, we have signs, and our campaign is decline to sign. We're trying to stop them from getting signatures or just spread good information. So we need more volunteers for that. That's mainly on weekends and 2-hour shifts. And if you indicate you're willing to do that on that volunteer form at protectthewind.org, someone will be in touch to line you up for that. Another thing that we will need help with when they turn in the signatures, both sides are allowed observers at the verification process. So we need volunteers. So that would be probably 2-hour shifts during business hours. Weekday business hours is probably when the verification will happen. We haven't gotten the full details on it yet, but we need people to observe as they go through the signatures, and we'd get a brief training about what to do and what to look for and so on. So if you're interested in that, again, you could indicate it on the Protect the Wind volunteer tab for that. We're doing phone banking for two reasons. One, we have a vast database of people that ever supported Pamela over the years. So we're calling people just to enlist more volunteers for the activities we're doing. And if it becomes a ballot measure, we'll certainly need lots of volunteers. And we're also doing phone banking for fundraising because we really need funds. We've hired some consultants for public relations and communications, but also it looks like there are going to be legal battles over the recall process. So we have to hire lawyers for that. So we do need donations. So you can donate on that website, or you can help make phone calls to people who have donated in the past. We have records of who have been good donors to try to build up our resources. And then there's lots of random ways you can help out. Pamela speaks at events. It helps to have supporters there when she speaks. You can arrange to have her speak to an organization or religious, a church or synagogue, or any forum where she can speak, because she's really an effective speaker. And
Rivka, there's another question up from Carol
Okay.
Morosevich. It's about the period before Pamela was elected, but I know it's an important issue. Carol, do you want to?
Okay.
Well, it's actually really relevant now because there was a settlement agreement that was achieved in November of 2023. This settlement agreement just came down.
If you could
So-
ask the question, that
Yeah,
would
I will.
give us the context. Yeah.
So in 2021, there was a scathing report released by the Department of Justice, where they had findings about the unnecessary institutionalization at Santa Rita Jail, or rather at John George, and unnecessary incarceration at the Santa Rita Jail of persons who were in mental health crisis. This includes plaintiffs from Berkeley, as well as obviously Oakland. Because there would be a subsequent litigation filed by Disability Rights California. Again, this was because of insufficient community alternatives in Alameda County. So that litigation just settled in November of 2023. the part about Santa Rita doing reforms, that is still outstanding, but there is settlement again at the county in terms of, and with specific provisions. And I was wondering how your office, if at all, we will be involved in this very important settlement agreement. There's ongoing monitoring of it too.
So
Okay,
to-
so
just to clarify, Carol, Rivka is not from the DA's office. She's from
yeah,
Oh,
I'm a
campaign to
volunteer.
keep her recall, but she may
Right.
know.
Okay, the Santa Rita jail is under the sheriff, and we elected Yesenia Sanchez in the last election, who seemed to be a better alternative and improvement over the terrible previous sheriff,
Yeah.
Ahern. And it's been kind of a mixed bag. We're still kind of waiting to see how much she is gonna try to change things. You know, Santa Rita jail is notorious for the high number of people who have died in custody there. Some, a number of them very suspicious deaths, unexplained deaths, etc. And the families whose loved ones have died in the jail under unexplained or suspicious circumstances have been treated horribly by the sheriff's office. And I haven't been following the developments in the jail that closely. Pamela certainly is very strongly in favor of improving the conditions in the jail, not basing mental health services in the jail, instead investing in community-based mental health services, addiction services, and so on. But in terms of her direct involvement, I'm not completely sure what falls under her domain and how much is that the sheriff has control over it. So that's something
so I just want to
want.
add, this goes beyond the jail. It also includes John George, where the treatment was inappropriate and inhumane. And the settlement agreement does require several community-based alternatives involved. Without going into detail about all of them, I hope her office, I understand now you're not really speaking as her spokesperson from the office, but I really hope her office will have a role in enforcing the settlement agreement, because it's against the county, not against just the jail. Thank
I'm
you.
sure she will. I'm
Can-
sure she will do what
Can
she
I,
can.
I'm sorry. Can I just say, Carol, why it might be useful if you had a little report next time, if we can ask you to, because Carol is chair of the Women's Commission here in Berkeley, but also possibly chair, because you go in and out of chair of these commissions for both the Mental Health Commission and
Well, not mental health. That's been a while. Homeless Services Panel of Experts.
yeah, but you're I know many of us are interested deeply in why can't we get mental health services, or where are they in Berkeley and Oakland? So if you have a short report for next month, that would be great, or at another time, an email.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thanks.
I
I'm-
just want to add,
Yep.
I want to
Go
add
on.
one
Sorry.
thing. An important part of Pamela's campaign was to deal with the many ways in which racism is embedded in the operations of the criminal justice system. And she
Mhm.
stayed very true to that promise. She has done work in various ways to reduce the level of racism at the different stages of the criminal justice system. And that's like fallen by the wayside, with all these attacks on her and debates about her. You don't hear about that whole line of work, or that the recall folks care about that aspect of what she's trying to do. It's just about street crime. And, street crime is real, but sometimes I have to wonder, is it being a little bit played up beyond what's happening? Because if you read next door, there's endless reports of crime. but there's a way in which sometimes it seems like it's being played up and to suit a particular political agenda. And, it's one important aspect of what the DA is in charge of, but we don't hear about all the other aspects and all the good things Pamela is doing on other forms of crime and violence and protection of public safety. So, it's tricky because we are all concerned about crime, but it's not the only thing going on. And in some ways, she's not as much in charge of it. The police are, at least, she does the charging part, but she doesn't stop crime herself. Okay.
So I wanted to draw attention to the chat. Norma is saying, vote yes on Measure B, which mildly corrects some of the erroneous legislating Rivka told us. So I put a link to Measure B if anyone wants to follow up. Do you want to say something about that very briefly about what's in that again and why we should vote for Measure B?
Okay, it turns out Pamela Price's Protect the Win campaign is not putting out a position on Measure B. And again, it's because of that complication going on. I personally am going to vote for it because overall it's much needed reforms to make it less easy to do a recall. But there is the one consideration now that it could help defeat the recall if we stick with the county rules, because it may well throw out a bunch of the signatures they've collected that were not collected by registered Alameda County voters. And I've heard some buzz that maybe that requirement is unconstitutional. So, the recall folks might do a lawsuit if it is enforced that the signature collectors have to be registered Alameda County voters. So there may be a legal charge if that provision stays in effect. And the state rules don't have that restriction on who can collect signatures. So that's the one factor that is better about the county rules.
Oh,
And I'm not sure why the campaign isn't speaking in favor of Measure B, because overall it's good, needed reforms that increase the number of signatures you need to collect, that lengthens the time for the whole process, that makes it more likely if there's a ballot measure, it'll be during a November election or a primary election versus a special election.
well,
That's costly and that draws out the supporters of the recall more than the opponents of it. So, it's kind of tricky. And
just
like
to
I
be
said,
clear,
I myself intend to vote for Measure B, but it's not a campaign position in favor of
and
Measure B.
and it wouldn't affect, well, Norma, why don't do you have a question or did you want to illuminate? Here, I'm going to ask you to unmute and just.
Betsy, go ahead with what you were going to ask. It wouldn't affect what you think you'd worry about?
Well, you wanted to say something more than what Rivka has said?
I just to guarantee that we hi Rivka. It's great the
I
work
know
you
him.
do. Yeah. And everybody hi. The Peace and Freedom Party had a meeting Sunday evening. We do once a month, going over this. We have a couple of brilliant people that do this kind of work to assess the various measures that are so beneficial to our owners and sometimes beneficial to us, and came up with the position that I stated in the chat, which Betsy repeated. I just wanted to affirm that the party, the Alameda County party is supporting it strongly, actually, for the various reasons that you think it has good use at any points.
Okay, thank you, Norma.
Thanks.
I'm gonna come ahead of Maria if you just to ask my question or reinforce a point, which is this. The who's behind and how they are behind this recall. First, I've put in the chat, I know not all of you can see it, where Oakland side named the top four, I think, top three folks. Two of them are public facing. One is a woman who had her son killed by gun violence in 2010. So I don't want to minimize that somehow she's whatever. But what bothers me enormously, and it's something I've railed about here, is the dark money that where a few individuals can anonymously give a lot of money. And in this case, develop a financier, Philip Dreyfus, Oakland resident, a financier, has started two, what I'm assuming are like the equivalent of dark money PACs. And they've raised in a handful of major donors. One's called Reviving the Bay Area. So they set up two of these political action committees or some kind of, big pocket to put big donations in to get Pamela Price out of office. And I have no doubt they have some other plans. So I just want to remind people, I would love us to get a better understanding of how the California Association of Realtors and the Bay Area Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors have colluded over decades and decades of the 20th century and may be behind this as well. When we hear real estate interests, it's not always developers, it's realtors who stand to gain by making sure certain parts of the Bay Area are protected as wealthy enclaves so they can get great commissions, and how other areas are kept as like, well, this is where the predators can play. That's how I see it now. And so I'm hoping we'll get a speaker, but this dark money, we see it in Berkeley with the rent board rent convention coming up. We'll be seeing some of this again. So I wonder if you know anything more, Rivka, about this Reviving the Bay Area PAC or whatever it is. And then the other one they created and financed was Save Alameda for Everyone, which is the name of their campaign to get rid of Price. So what do you know anything else about those PACs and what they're putting their money to?
Okay, so the Revive Alameda PAC or whatever it is that it is
Committee, yeah.
bringing in dark money, they actually didn't file their donors. They missed the deadline when they were supposed to say who is contributing to it. But that Oakland side article helps identify who's contributing to it. But I don't know any more than what the Oakland side article reveals. But the recall organization, Save Alameda County for Everyone. So, recalling Pamela Price is going to save the county for everyone. The two leaders of it, one is Brenda Grisham, and she just has it in for Pamela in a very personal, vindictive way. So yeah, she had a son murdered in 2010 on the streets, and she has been someone working with people who lose loved ones to gun violence, and she was very close with Nancy O'Malley, the previous DA, and she got funding to do her activities. And she portrays herself as representing, all victims whose loved ones have been murdered, but she's totally hates Pamela Price. And I've tried to find out why, but so she has a small number of families or mothers of murder victims who speak at all the recall rallies. But the thing is, she does not represent all mothers of murdered children. There are many who support Pamela, who believe in Pamela's reforms. There's something on the website about how she just was invited and honored by a group called 1,000 Mothers of Crime Victims. She has many supporters whose family members have been victims of crime and been murdered. And she's done so much to improve the level of victim services in the DA's office, way beyond what existed before. You can read the statistics of how many victims families of crime victims she's served, supported. She has a wonderful program led by a wonderful woman.
Rivka, you don't have to defend the opponents. I mean, this is good. This is a real person with a real a real issue for herself, but she's not paying for these campaigns. What does she have in common with the financier or with, who are financing, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars? So I'm just, you don't have to know the answer. I just didn't.
No, she's one of the big faces of the recall campaign.
Yeah.
She's horrible.
So, thanks.
I don't know a lot about the financial side of things.
Well, I'm just warning or encouraging our Gray Panthers that that's something I really would like I'd like to bring a speaker in and learn more about, because the election season is coming and we need to know who's putting in what to buy what. So, Maria, you had your hand up again. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Because number one, Betsy, thank you for bringing up that topic.
And Arlene, after you.
Follow the money is so essential because somebody is profiting from this. And I want to, again, thank you, good speaker, because you come from that rich background of persecuted people. And I'm pretty sure you can relate to vengeance is not the answer. And I know that Pamela, coming from her background, is personally, utterly, totally like direct experience aware of what it means to be a victim. And she's not coming in a retaliatory way. She's coming in a what will stop creating the problem. Because if we don't get to the cause of what the problem is that has these kids vandalizing or desperate people, and again, Gray Panthers, the intersectionality or the homeless experts, I mean, we're all involved in the intersectionality of how the lack of service and support for people is what drives them to desperate despair and some of this misbehaving. And it's understandable, but we've got to do it differently and better, rather than these people that keep profiting from perpetuating the problem. They're perpetuating the problem so they can keep dominating, controlling, and making too much money. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You've got me. And thank you, Betsy, and everybody here. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. And Arlene, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was thinking, follow the money, right? And so I think C4C, a care for community, because I was just reading about, the attack is coming for the mayor of the city of Oakland, right? And so right after that, it's going to be Carol Fife, right? So all of them have progressive concepts in how they're approaching things. And so if C4C is a great organization. You've met them before, I think, at the teaching at Laney. They might be a good organization to invite to follow the money. One of the other things is, like Maria was saying, it's really, no one is looking at the cause. I had to stood on a panel, and when I was doing research, they said, I looked at the number just for the National Realty Association, not for the collective. And as of like November of 2023, they had already invested $75 million in lobbying. And lobbying where? So they're giving money to PACs, they're going to Congress, they're doing all of these things. And we're not looking at this group that is on the right? We're not looking at them. We're not looking at the money. We're not looking at where it's coming from and how they impact it. And we have to pay attention because that is what is producing the movements. And so like Maria was saying, I looked at the youth employment program because they asked me to do some bullet points. And I said, the summer youth employment programs have been reduced. Youth employment programs have been reduced. All of the things, all of the restorative justice programs reduced. So the focus is only on the violence. That's the only thing they talk about. They don't talk about anything else. They don't even talk about the Peralta district where the classes have been free, but there's no publicity for those who actually need those services. It's only for very specific groups. So until we come up, like Maria said, with a better way to do things, because we're doing things the wrong way. And this is the result of it. And they acting like there was no crime prior to Pamela Price. And it was crime. It was a tremendous amount of crime, especially in Oakland before Pamela Price. And so, I'm with Betsy, follow the money. And whatever way we can support them not stealing our voices, not stealing our votes, because that's essentially what it is. Stealing our votes and stealing our voices. And so we're doing the Teaching at Laney Poor People's Campaign coming up. And it's basically all around this because we are supporters of Pamela Price. Okay, thank you.
So thank you,
Yeah,
Arlene.
but-
I'm gonna pause and we'll close out. I think Arlene gave us a good finale. Rivka, if you want to say a few more words, otherwise I'm going to ask everyone to applaud.
Betsy, I have to leave at
Thank you.
I have to leave at 3. I have class at 3.
Yeah, and so the reason I'm drawing a close on this conversation is because we have other speakers, not speakers, but announcements. So that was Matthew Lewis. So Rivka, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and just give you a hand if they can reach the unmute button, or just know that I'm doing this for others. And thank you
all.
And do you want to leave one last website or link in the chat? Please do.
I just want to say that a study just came out that the ceasefire program is shown in a new study to have reduced crime. And that's one of the many good programs that aren't getting funded, while we may have to throw 20 million at a special election to recall Price. So ceasefire works, getting people formerly who were involved in criminal activity when they were young and know better now, who work with at-risk youth and prevent and intervene.
Thank you. I hope we'll have you back again for this and the other committees that you're part of, civic actions. Please come back again.
Thanks.
Thanks. So on our agenda, I'd like to call up Matthew Lewis, he's on so many housing committees. I'm forgetting them all, Matthew, but I know you're here to tell us about the Berkeley Renters Convention coming up this July. And just so everyone who might not know, the Gray Panthers has been part of reviewing candidates for the rent board slate, I don't know, for many, many years before I was ever part of Gray Panthers. And having served in that position, it's a really interesting vantage point. So Matthew, come and tell us what we need to know from your side of the world.
Yeah, so first 2 things, which is one, I just want to note in terms of that real estate dark money Betsy mentioned, we don't just see it in the rent board races. We saw the, I think $20,000 dropped 4 years ago by the realtors to in dark money to support Terry Kaplan against Cyril Dobbin. He's paid them back handsomely on the city council, blocking stuff such as expanding rent control, while lying that they spent that super PAC money. Second thing is rent board convention will actually probably not be in July. It'll probably be closer to end of April or beginning of May, though that will be decided by the planning committee. But that's our assumption, it'll be moved earlier, but folks may disagree. So now on to the main rent board convention. For about approximately the past 30 years, Berkeley's progressive organizations have come together to hold a convention to pick the progressive pro-tenant rent board slate. Because Berkeley is one of only 2 cities, the other being Santa Monica, where funnily enough I was born, in the only 2 cities in the entire country with an elected rent board. Everybody in Berkeley, including people who are ineligible to vote, such as folks who are non-citizens or folks who are under 18, are allowed to cast a ballot at the rent board convention, provided they meet a few conditions, such as they agree not to campaign against the slate, including campaigning for anybody who's not on the slate that's ultimately picked by the rent board convention. So you don't have to support or endorse the people who are who are slated if you don't like them, but you're not allowed to campaign against them, which is similar to the rules that political parties have in every other country. And so then we all the co-sponsored organizations interview the candidates and give them a rating. And then we have the convention where people vote, and then there's in the past, before COVID, voting was done, you came to convention in person. Since COVID, we have been doing it online with online voting. It's to be determined what we will be doing this year, as COVID is less threatening now, but still a thing. And that's a bit of a summary of the rep board convention. I believe, it's my understanding from talking to Betsy, that they Gray Panthers will be co-sponsored.
So that's actually, we were invited as usual to join the planning committee, which sets the ground rules for the candidates and interviews candidates. We as an organization do not endorse particular candidates, or I'm assuming slates of candidates either. But as part of the planning meeting, I would love to have someone, to at least one person, to join us and in representing Gray Panthers, because the interview process can be quite laborious, and it's great to divide it up between different people. It's also, it's like looking under the hood of Berkeley politics and the different groups involved. Matthew, can you tell me when the next, so one, if you are interested, raise your hand or put it in chat that you'd be interested in keeping up with the planning committee, and then Matthew, can you say a little more about the planning committee and how often it will meet, and what's going on next week?
I'm trying to remember how often we usually meet, but I think at some point it becomes maybe meeting about once every week. Early on, it's maybe meeting every 2 weeks. It'll probably be at certain points, like right before the convention, it'll probably be meeting more frequently.
Okay.
But I think we'll probably be meeting about once a week.
I want to recognize that Julia Cato, who's on the rent board steering committee and been involved in these conventions, is here. Welcome, Julia, longtime Gray Panther member. Did you want to follow up on anything Matthew said from your point of view?
No, I hope that the rules for participation are not quite so restrictive this time, and more inclusive, so that we don't lose people because we're trying to control them too much.
I don't believe there was any changes to I just want to clarify, there were no changes.
I don't like to argue with you, Matthew. I want to make my statement and let it stand.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to provide clarification, which is that I don't believe there were any changes to who was eligible to vote in the last convention, compared to the one before.
I do.
I think there are some contested viewpoints, which is because we're alive and history proceeds. So I'm going to thank you, Matthew.
Okay, I just need to know that some people, not Julia, have been trying to put out quote unquote alternative facts about that, and have been trying to confuse people. And so we just can't have contestation of objective facts. And while I'm not saying,
yeah, I am aware of the issue. having served on the planning committee with both of you, or at least one of you, for a number of years, or at least 2 elections. That's not that many years. So I'm aware of some of the issues. Again, if someone would be of our membership in Gray Panthers would be up for, being a buddy in this planning committee, I'd be really glad, or anyone else who wants to call me, feel free to talk about what my experience has been on the planning committee and strengths and other questions. So please consider it. You don't have to go every week, but it'd be really great to have, if not our housing team, then just a Gray Panther buddy to hold that. Okay. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. And again, I just want to emphasize.
Matthew is very active with the East Bay Democratic Socialists of America Housing Committee, and has, really keeps his eye open for all kinds of good housing coalition works that links us with Oakland and the state. So.
Yes, and I just want to emphasize one more time, just because sometimes, words cut out on Zoom and stuff, that Julia is not one of the people behind putting out the misinformation and quote alternative facts. She's not responsible for that.
Thank you.
But everybody starts hearing that from people, and there's psychological things that hurt. You hear something multiple times, and you start to believe it, even if you know it's not true. And so I just want to emphasize that, we can't have alternative facts, and that we should all work to try and double check the information. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew.
And I'm going to have to leave for class now if there are no questions.
Thanks for coming out of your day. And thank you, Julia. I know you've been, a real stalwart on the Berkeley Tenants Union and Gray Panthers. So thank you. So this is,
Welcome.
I want to just recognize that we want to hear, I'm going to suggest we take a very short stretch break, or we could just keep going. Is there anyone who needs a little stretch break, bio break for just 5 minutes? I'm not seeing hands going up. So why don't we just keep going? We have Hallie Hammer, who's asked to share a little bit about People's Park, which I'm really grateful for that she's here to speak on that. I was also hoping, Hallie, that you or Robert, but I think you're the person who might be able to speak about getting out the senior vote.
Oh, okay.
Training with Kara. So let's just start with People's Park very briefly. Not everyone here is in Berkeley and knows that history, but please tell us what's
Okay. Well, I want to just start by saying that we have a court case that's supposed to come up to the Supreme Court of California in about a month or two. And we have certain stipulations that were in place about what the university could and could not do in the interim.
Who is we, by the way, Hallie?
It's the People's Park Council, and also involved is the Berkeley Historical Society, and also involved our neighbors around People's Park. So there's a lawsuit that's coming up, and the university was not supposed to either construct or destruct anything until this hearing was happening. It was said that they were allowed to fence off the area. It didn't say anything about these huge containers that they've put around the park. Anyway, a few weeks ago on a Thursday, they came in and very heavy police presence put these huge containers that go on ships and trains all around the park, about 17 feet high, which was not, we didn't consider that fencing, but aside from that, they knocked down a whole bunch more trees in the park. They destroyed the bathroom area. They did a whole bunch of things which go counter to what was told that they were allowed to do in the interim period. They also knocked down a bunch of trees in the median that weren't even in the park. So the university has gone really rogue on this whole situation. We're going to have, involved with the People's Park Council. We're going to have a community meeting at Art House on February 6th. I'll send the information once we get a flyer to Gray Panthers. Maybe you can get it out to the membership. But
It's no promises, but
no, okay,
I'll
well,
try to
I'll,
put it in here, Art House.
right. We also are going, it's going to be in the calendar of the Berkeley Times. Todd put it in there for us for sure. So that will be in February. And we're going to have Tom Dalzell, who wrote the book about Berkeley, 50-year history of Berkeley, is going to be speaking. Some members of the Max Ventura and we're seeing who else can be. We have a student coming in who's involved with the Suitcase Clinic, which is the university group that works for People's Park. And we're going to have a short presentation from the panelists, followed by a Q&A with the community. So if you know anybody who has any questions, or if you have any questions about what's going on, or any comments about People's Park, please do come to that meeting. Now, as for Cara, let me get this. Hold on one second. I'm going to get the actual wording.
And I will put up a flyer if I find it.
Okay. Is it possible to share screen, or?
Yes, I can make you co-host. You should be able to do it now.
Okay. Okay, so this is the senior vote program. Can you see that? Are you able to see that on the screen?
We can see.
Okay, so it's just in my email, which is why it's kind of in the middle there. Senior vote program. You can sign up to be a senior ambassador, and the link, I'm going to copy the link here. It's a whole. Okay, let me copy that.
Welcome and happy New Year, everyone.
Anyway, I'm not going to show the whole thing, but there's a recording of the program that there's a program thing, and there's also, let me just put that in chat real quickly to everyone. This is the recording of how to become a senior ambassador. And if you want to sign up, you can click to volunteer.
So
And I will put that in the chat as well. But basically what we did last year, which was really effective, was we got 100 names, and they're hoping to get 250 senior ambassadors.
let me back up just a sec.
Yeah.
The California Alliance of Retired Americans is, as most of you know, but not all, is our big tent. I mean, we are active members. A number of our members are active members, but they do incredible state and also national, but state organizing. And this senior, and they have monthly meetings here in Alameda County. Cara is, so to get out the vote, the senior vote is seniors who sign up, get a little bit of training, get a list of names, and then call other seniors, regardless of party, just to encourage them to vote. So
right, but it goes beyond that. You get the
thank
list. You get the list of 100 people, and you make 100 calls, and then you establish who you are and invite them to a forum about issues. It's not about candidates, it's about issues. And these are mostly people who are declined to state as far as their political affiliation. And a lot of them are from the Valley. So you make your phone calls, then you send 100 postcards, and the postcards give them information about, hi, it's me. I remember I called you, and or it may be the other way around this year, I'm not sure, but you do a postcard, you do a call, and then there's a follow-up again. And out of the 100 people, I left a lot of messages. I sent a lot of postcards, but I spoke to a good percentage of the people I spoke to. I may have spoken to about 15 or 20 people, and about 10 of those people were interested in joining the forum. So there's, out of the 100 names, there was a good 10% of the people who were interested in joining those forums. It's very easy to do. You don't have to send out 100 postcards at one time. It's over a period of weeks. You can, if you have the wherewithal, you can pay for your own postcards and stamps. If you don't have the wherewithal, they will supply you the postcards and stamps. So it's a wonderful program. I stuck it in the chat, and I intend to do it again because it was very rewarding and successful.
Thank you. Let's get back.
And
Great.
I will also put the date of the People's Park meeting in the chat.
So if you stick around past 3:30, we'll have a member discussion about whether we want to participate in that, maybe buy the postage and sponsor any people here who'd like to participate, but maybe in a more social way. 100 phone calls sounds like a lot, but I admire Hallie's energy and really appreciate that. So,
But you can do 5 or 10 at a time. You don't have to do
Yeah.
100. And
Yeah.
and you can do it over a month period, which really is not that much.
great. And Kara's issues are mighty, but we have some that already overlap with our, with our ongoing work with the long-term supports and services for all coalition, and some of our housing issues that I'm hoping we will talk more about at another meeting. Okay, thanks. If you go, do you want to put the link to the record and the priorities? Hallie, are you able to do that? In the chat. This is if you want to catch up on.
Okay, well, I
Yes.
put in for the whole senior vote program. I put in
Okay,
about the senior vote and also the video about the whole project.
okay.
What else did you want me to put in? I can look it up if you want.
Oh, it's okay. They have, Kara has a list of, has its report on 2023 accomplishments and.
Okay, I'll look and see if
Yes.
I can find that and put it in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. And Hallie has also put in the information about the gathering on February 6th, if you'd like to know more about the People's Park issue. So put that, okay, so that reminds me, usually Norma cleans up the chat and sends it out. So I'm looking forward to seeing if you can do that again, Norma. Saving the chat, but also you've cleaned it up in the past. That's really helpful. Okay.
I do want to say, I'm just going to put in the general thing because on the front page, there's information about both the get out to vote and legislative accomplishments and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's see, do I have? One of the other follow-ups was on the utility tax. If you remember, in November, we had Igor Tregev come and speak about the proposed flat $30 to $70 a month utility tax that was passed in the state budget last fall, but without any discussion about this universal utility tax. There are some exemptions for it, but essentially, those are good. But if you'd like to follow up, it did not, the petition, the pressure at the California Utilities Commission, CPUC, did not work. if you, in this case, or did not succeed in challenging the tax, I think we're very interested in it. Anyone here on a fixed income or concerned about people on fixed incomes, it would be the largest utility flat tax of any state in the country. I think $10 is the average, and the one proposed here could be $30, and it could go up. And it does not in any way limit rate increases at the PG&E or utility company as well. So that there are we still sharing? Norma, you should be able to see everybody's faces.
Click on gallery.
If you click on gallery view, you can get my mug off this.
Betsy, there's only about half group faces shown. The rest have not allowed themselves to have their face shown if they are able to. And I'm
Oh, you're
encouraged-
asking, I'm sorry.
That's up to them.
That's up to them if they would like.
And I
to
know
share their
that,
video.
that's why I asked that it would be nice. It was
Okay.
not a command. There's no alternative. There's no money connected with it, Betsy.
Well,
Well, you
we
know.
would, I will invite, no, anyone who comes to our meeting is allowed to be seen and heard. But it's a nice little.
It'd be nice to see everyone's face. I
Yes.
would like that myself.
Okay. Thank you, Norma. I always enjoy that also. So I just wanted to say that the issue of the utility tax is now essentially the group, the organized group, there's a couple of environmental groups that are working, are looking for a legislator to stand up and reconsider that budget item so that the tax could be withdrawn, since there were no public hearings on that particular element of the budget that allows the utilities to institute a tax. So more on that later. I'm not going to get into the details of the rent board, or if you don't mind, Carol, there's a question in chat. I have a couple of other announcement people, and one of them is Maria Soul, who can share, I hope, today a little about the coalition partnership with the Accessible Pathways, Accessible Shelters coalition partnership with Center for Independent Living and Senior and Disability Action. Maria, is that what your hand's up for? Beautiful.
Well, no, actually, what I wanted to do is follow up on PG&E because I'm still interfacing with that amazing group that's dealing with all of the electric shutoffs of elder medical equipment just returning from surgery people with these, bloated rates, etc. So it's more than just a tax. It's about the fact that they are convicted criminals still killing people, and I'm really outraged. So anyway, here's to that. And then with regard to CIL and the pathways thing, us gallant people, of which you are one, Miss Betsy, we keep meeting, we keep trying to organize as to what the pertinent and effective information, fact-based data might be, such that we can get some attention brought, like I've been speaking to this entire meeting, of how people are not being cared for, how people are literally being abused and neglected. And whether it's the elders or the disabled or whatever, CIL is really trying to, with its credibility, bring some attention to that. And we just have to nail it. Because again, all of this talk is beautiful. The fact that we gather is beautiful. The fact that we care is magnificent. But we've got to get our ducks in the row and try to keep me from driving my truck through City Hall's doors. I mean, I'm trying to still maintain my pacifism here, but I'm really tired of seeing all of the neglect and abuse and then greed and cruelty. So we're working on it. And that's my report. We have another meeting coming up. Okay, Betsy?
Thanks. Yep,
Thank you.
and I think the group is leading towards a general press conference, which we
Yeah,
would love to
we've
have
got to
Panthers
do,
at.
just like Harriet Tubman did. We've got to bring attention to this. It's kind of like the clouds that just blow
So
across,
what is
oh
this?
well, oh
Yeah.
well, more of the same, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. Well, no, it stops here with every person that gets killed or dies or suffers unnecessarily. We've got to rise and shine. So yeah, we're trying to narrow it down and actually, you know, hit a specific time and a place to do publicity, because I know that everyone has an elder somebody or a disabled somebody. So somewhere there's care in everyone, but they don't, or they prefer not to see the need. And we're trying to bring attention to it because it must be addressed. It must be addressed. All right. Thank you.
You're muted, Betsy. You're muted. Take your mute off.
All right, I wanted to share that Lou Church from Portland Gray Panthers has alerted, has sent a flyer and that's called, it was an editorial that he wrote in Portland. Women in housing, are women overlooked in the homelessness crisis? And then it tells some stories. We often get calls from women and older men. I shouldn't say often, but we have over the last 2 years in the time of the pandemic. We're hearing and learning about the enormous gaps in this safety net that doesn't quite exist except in name. And the enormous gaps are ones that have allowed people with disabilities and older adults who don't feel safe being in the very often large and anonymous shelter systems, even here in Berkeley, which have done so well. But so this having a voice to speak in a unified way about the housing gaps for seniors and people with disabilities that then become homeless, gaps in the homeless services, completely inadequate homeless services provision. And and that's what Maria's talking about, a coalition that we're having with CIL, Center for Independent Living, and Senior and Disability Action. So thank you, Maria, for being a regular part of those meetings. I wanted to briefly say we could get Lou in as a voice from another Gray Panther chapter. And if you're interested in hearing what they're up to, he often joins these meetings, but I didn't have a chance to ask him to prepare something about this, the issues of women in housing, people who call their Gray Panther office there in Portland. We share a lot of things.
Carol has an announcement.
Oh, okay. And I did already request, we'll get there, Carol, that, excuse me, oh, Arlene, are you able to say anything about the Continuum of Care group, the sort of governing council of homeless services in Alameda County? Do you want to say a little bit about what we've been doing as the housing team?
Well, one of the interesting things, everyone home who home based now, who actually administers the continuum of care. And so Betsy, which is the umbrella, which is the government entity that actually delivers the coordinated entry services for housing and homelessness. And that's here in the state of California. Well, actually it's national, but particularly here for Alameda County. one of the things that Betsy brought to my attention is grievances because of this situation at Pathways. And it's not just Pathways, it's also Henry Robinson was just in the Oakland side. It's a number of organizations. And one of the things that Betsy asked me about, and I went to the written standards and found out that there is no department that actually takes grievances and complaints. And so Kerry Abbott, I don't know if you know, Kerry Abbott, who is the director of Office of Homeless Care and Coordination for Alameda County, is leaving the position. They now have a new person that's coming in March. And one of the things, as I was reading the written standards, I see that it's written down what should be done, but there's no departments to actually enforce what the needs are. So here we are, how many years, SDA, Robinson, and all of these other organizations that are making complaints about issues within this system, but nobody has developed an actual plan for how to come up with a better plan, how to actually make it work. Not just to take the complaints from the physical location, but what the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination does and how they will do it. Betsy and I had talked about an ombudsman department. We need someone in that position, not only to take the complaints and the grievances, but we also need someone for oversight and accountability. If there's something wrong with the physical buildings, who owns the buildings? And who are the people that are the contractors that are doing the work? Because a tremendous amount of money is being wasted. And nobody is really looking at that for oversight. And I actually was talking to someone that does work in this department and about the possibility of really developing a department for this particular thing so that we're not running around in circles, not having to have, you shouldn't have to do all of these steps. All of these organizations shouldn't have to get, press releases and this and that, and people shouldn't have to suffer. If we come up with a plan, it's good that we're publicizing, we're making people know, but we have to develop a plan to make it more effective because it's not effective now. And that is what the point of the meetings that I've been having with Betsy and with people in the continuum of care. Because there's a lack of compliance. There's a lack of oversight and there's a lack of accountability.
Plenty of money, but
it's not being utilized right. And that is part of the problem. And the more I read the written standards and actually talked to the people on the committees with the continuum of care and different organizations, I'm finding that nobody has a real plan to do better. So we just like jumping up and down, going around and around on the same thing, but, come up with a plan. And so, I've kind of been working on something with a couple of folks and we'll see what happens.
thanks, Arlene.
Okay.
We'll keep, you keep us on top of that and let us know when you need a few bodies. Thanks. I see that, I'm sorry. I had a list of people to call on and I will get to you, Carolyn Rains, apparently, who've asked for some time. But right now I want to say, Stefan, welcome from Redwood Gardens. That's a beautiful tree in your photo. And did you have any updates or want to tell us what's going on at Redwood Gardens with your tenants council? There you are.
Get me visible here. Redwood Gardens, I don't have so much to report, but I don't know if everyone is aware of the National Alliance of HUD tenants. It's been going through some troubling times. Was taken over, and I got elected to the national board of it, and we first of all had to try to wrestle back the ownership or take control from people who just took over. It was a situation very much like Trump and Trump people just bullying and pushing people out, pushed out the executive director of the National Alliance of HUD Tenants, just like that 2 years ago. And so we're trying to correct that situation, and before we can go on really with any more of what we're trying to do. So I've been spending quite a bit of time on that. As far as Redwood Gardens, we went through a big rehab here, and the owners have not really followed through on what they said they were going to do, and that's something that we're trying to work on also here. They just sort of abandoned us, and we keep saying, you know, we're going to get things completed here or not. So I don't know what else to report at this point. If people have questions about NAT or the National Alliance of HUD Tenants, either way, Redwood Gardens or National Alliance of HUD Tenants are trying to make it so that people keep their homes. We're discussing with HUD officials about evictions, trying to prevent people from being evicted, meaning more homelessness. But yeah, I don't know if you had specific things that you wanted to question me about, Betsy, or anybody else.
Arlene's got her hand up. I think it's very important for us to know, and you got yourself muted, to know about this National Alliance of HUD Tenants. I don't know anything about it.
It's the largest tenants
he said that.
association. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's the largest in the country. And I'll just add that the Biden administration, Biden-Harris, just released a kind of framework for a tenants' rights charter of, you know, Bill of Rights for renters in this country, which does not exist for residential renters. And NAT is currently more regulated and more protected technically than any other group of tenants in the country. And so this Biden administration white paper has interesting framework, with most of it affecting the housing that either HUD or U.S. Department of Agriculture, which has about 300,000 units of housing for seniors and others. So we'll bring you back more information, but we used to have five HUD housing projects, you know, communities here in Berkeley that were part of NAT, but I believe we're down to 2 and maybe even 1. Harriet
we need a person to come in and tell us stuff, you know, like what Rivka did, you know, what our speakers usually do is a few minutes.
Okay. Well, then I won't try to fill in, but I will say that.
Well, it's not on the agenda, so.
Yeah, but I am filling in, and thank you, Stefan. I know, you know, we were involved last year with a rally in support of seniors at Harriet Tubman and all seniors in HUD housing. There was a group, Sojourner Truth, that also was at that rally, and it was about effective communication and really bad gratuitous repairs that were put into Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth with no accountability from their owners, or very little that mattered to the residents. So
yeah, I'll just say that, and somebody just asked the question. I don't know if it was Carol or who, but Nat, is to explain what National Alliance of HUD Tenants is, that, you know, each of our buildings here have, around the country, have, a lot of them have tenant associations. You know, we try to have a say in the way that we are being managed. And so the National Alliance of HUD Tenants is an alliance, a collection of all, or a lot of those tenant associations. And they try to, you know, enforce tenants' rights and to make things better. And they have a conference, a national conference once a year in DC. Of course, that was on hold during COVID, but also HUD has just released $10 million for tenant associations to organize, for organizing and for furthering tenants' rights. And it hasn't been distributed yet, but we're looking to Gray Panthers as one way to distribute that money. It would be a situation where Strawberry Creek Lodge and Redwood Gardens, Harriet Tubman, et cetera, whoever is HUD buildings in Berkeley would apply to get a little bit of that money. It's long term, it's still coming, but that's one thing that's happening with HUD. So there's a couple of hands up here. Did that answer for you, Carol?
Am I being called on? Sure. I mean, I want to speak to my announcement later too, that I was going to speak to, which wasn't on this issue, but on this issue, you know, I'm wondering how effective it is, because this organization, because, you know, Harry Tubman was very lucky, very fortunate to have a whole external community organizing for them and advocating for them. And that's why they've been able to achieve some goals locally. However, in most situations, people are going to feel very vulnerable, particularly seniors, about raising issues because they have really no place to go. If they have no alternative, they're going to be extremely concerned about retaliation. And so I'm concerned that, you know, these resident councils may exist in writing. Also, sometimes there are issues that residents actually may be in conflict with other residents on. And so they're concerned for that purpose of raising those issues. So they tend to just let everything go. So I would like to know some examples of where the national organization has been very helpful in, and there have been some results as a result of these regulations. Do we know other places that have been very successful?
It sounds like this is something we need to, maybe you can have me come on at another meeting and to explain some of the effects and the accomplishments of HUD, of National Alliance of HUD Tenants. But some of the HUD regulations have been changed and bettered by what Nat has been requesting. They will demand certain things of the HUD officials, and the HUD officials will take it into consideration and change some of these regulations. And all in all, it's helping to improve or to increase the power of the tenant associations.
So the website for Nat is, I don't know what it's become since the big shakeout. Do you know what it is?
Well, as far as I know, it's still the same.
Save Our Communities?
Well, yes, there is that, and but the website I'm not sure of just offhand, and it is undergoing changes also. website.
Yeah.
People are working on it.
So it's not a legal counsel. It's not doesn't
No.
come out and swoop down and protect individuals, Carol. But I'd be glad to share, I attended 2 years worth of bi-monthly meeting, is that twice a month meetings, and Stefan's, predecessor, several other people at Redwood Gardens were on the board in the past, Eleanor Walden from Gray Panthers. So there is a history. It's not the only resource for seniors in affordable housing, but yeah, look into it. And anyone can become an individual member. Where Gray Panthers are associate members, we don't have a vote. Only renters councils have votes. So that's an important part of their democratic structure. Rains, and then Maria. And then I would like to wrap up this portion, the announcements portion
Yeah,
of
we
our
should. We're
meeting.
into the home stretch. This
Well,
meeting.
Yeah.
I still haven't
I-
made the
I will-
announcements.
Well, Carol, is it related to Gray Panthers and the issues that we're talking
Of
about?
course,
Okay.
because mental health came up.
Well,
Arlene
I've
had her
already-
hand, Arlene had her hand up before all of these people.
I mean, it was a follow-up to what Arlene was saying, basically.
okay,
I just
Rains,
didn't
are
get
you
called
okay
in.
with Carol taking a minute?
No, go ahead, go ahead. I was
No,
just curious. I was just curious about Nat. Is this like, I was speaking with Betsy, she's been educating me. Is this the low income housing tax credit housing units? Or is this a different group of housing that's under HUD?
And
It's
that
all-
was my question too. Isn't
Yeah, it's only
Saha
HUD.
part of HUD also?
It's
Saha
No.
housing?
Yeah.
Tax credit buildings are not part of National Lines of HUD tenants.
Okay,
Trying to make it that way, but it's being worked on.
But they are part of HUD. Like
Well-
Saha is part of HUD, I understood. Yes or no?
Saha is not part of
No.
HUD, but they
So
have
they're not
Saha is
part of
HUD funding in part for some projects.
the management
So-
company only.
Most
Okay.
of the HUD NAT tenant associations are buildings that are primarily Section 8
Yeah.
rental
okay.
assistance,
Mm.
or built by a nonprofit developer or public housing tenants.
Okay.
who-
Thank you for
Okay.
that clarification.
Yeah,
But
and
Some of-
this speaks to what Arlene and you, Betsy, and I are always talking about, accountability and oversight. As soon as we introduce more and more and more layers of bureaucracy and even just management companies that are there to just profit, it gets screwed up almost immediately. So I really want to encourage us to not underestimate the power of our direct experience, our humongous hearts, and just refusing to give up on this. We've got to do it from the ground up, because we just keep getting spun around in the vortexes of all of this overthinking and overpaying and not getting anything done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
thanks, Maria. Carol, 1 minute, and then Rains. Our
I
last,
think Carol had her hand up from before.
yeah, well, she wanted to make an announcement.
Mhm.
Carol? Okay, Rains, why don't you go? And then Carol.
Well,
Okay, so you
first
don't
off-
want me to talk?
Well,
ahead.
you got to get on that unmute button.
It just came
No.
up. Just came up.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah,
Okay, so first I was saying Maria Saha is just like RCD or Bridge or any other, housing profit provider, developer. Okay, so going to, they're not the HUD organization that promulgates the rules and makes the payments, or not the HUD government division. I want to say, as to Arlene, I'm really curious about that. If they don't have a grievance process under the continuum of care. I know here in Berkeley, we're required to have, every provider has to have a grievance process, because Pathways was raised.
and they have to have a procedure that works all the way up. The problem is often it doesn't move as far up beyond the individual that's given the grievance. But it's supposed to be, and it's been a while. I've been in 5 funding cycles. This is the 6th one I'll have been in for community agency funding. And they have to provide a copy of their grievance procedure when any provider, when they apply for community agency funding. So there's always some sort of process. The announcements I want to make was the encampment mobile wellness team, which is the one that's intended to go to the homeless encampments and
In Berkeley
provide. Yes,
specifically?
in Berkeley, right. This is the 4.5 million over 4 to 5 years from Mental Health Services Act funds, which they should be able to keep their contract even if Prop 1 passes. The current contract should be honored. So that's about ready to start. This is for 4 to 5 years. The provider is Options, and I think this is belated, but they're starting in March. That's unfortunate because part of their role that came from the homeless panel of experts was them providing inclement weather supplies, etc. So obviously by March, it's probably going to be not needed anymore. But the terms of the contract aren't really clear, like what the hours are. I'm asking this, and it's Berkeley Mental Health that has somewhat held it up. But they do say now it definitely will be in place in March. And we'll know the staffing and we'll know the hours, hopefully by next month, but definitely by March once they've started. How that's going to link with the SEU, I'm not sure. Their hours are too limited, and the response time is long. The other thing I was going to say that, of course, we have the settlement agreement with the Department of Justice that was just entered into and by the county. And that's going to be really important for everybody to look at that's interested in these issues and see how they are going to be addressing all these, the community provisions. There's things in it like peer respite are required for only up to 6 people and more mobile crisis, etc. But there is supposed to be more of this community orientation. How that's going to work into Prop 1, which was the last thing I want to mention, that's on the March ballot. And that's going to be, actually, there's one more thing I have to mention, but Prop 1 is very interesting. I personally am in favor of it, but other people may have other thoughts. Prop 1 will change Mental Health Services Act into Behavioral Health Services, which means that they can serve substance use, which it didn't cover before. This is the 1% millionaires tax. There won't be any additional taxing involved. But the way the money is used will be changed so that some of it is going to go to I'm trying to think if it's about 30% goes into housing, but I believe it's going to be basically like board and care residential facilities in the communities mainly, and crisis beds. This will give less money for the localities. The state government will have more control. There's less money for some local mental health services that were earlier funded by the MHSA. But frankly, I've been sitting on I am currently in the Mental Health Services Act Committee, and I've been on there like 13, 14 years. And I see little contracts come, and we don't know if that money has been used wisely or not. It may be used wisely, but it's all uncoordinated and fragmented. And, I don't feel it's sufficiently monitored. I'm looking forward to the options team. But some of these little contracts, it's really not clear that's happening to them. The last thing I want to mention is the case that's going before the U.S. Supreme Court is the case from Grants Pass, Oregon, which is that they are challenging this provision that in order to have encampments removed, there has to be another alternative housing offered. And now we have this extremely conservative Supreme Court, and alternatives are, very important housing in terms of people being offered it before the encampments can be cleared. So we don't know what will happen. That decision will probably come down in June, And that'll impact homelessness tremendously as to whether or not housing has to be created and offered to people. And I just thought of one last thing that's very important. 2nd Street is about to be cleared, and the city is offering, is going to enter into a 4-year lease under encampment resolution monies with the Howard Johnson. That's the proposal that's coming forward with Howard Johnson's on University Avenue, 1512, I believe, is University Avenue. So that's going to be leased as an alternative for people to be housed. Am I even being heard?
Yeah, you are, and I really
Oh,
wanted
I'm
to
sorry.
respond back.
I saw a blank screen. So
No,
I know I jumbled
oh,
a lot in there. I just want people to know that's coming up. The Howard Johnson's, it's just being proposed at the Budget Council Budget Committee tomorrow. But that'll pass, it'll go to council, and so that'll be open for people to go to.
Carol,
wanted-
what was the encampment mobile what team?
The encampment mobile wellness team.
Wellness team.
And the way it was written up is it's supposed to work with the encampment, the clients, the encampment residents. We had proposed from the homeless panel of experts, or I had proposed, in addition to inclement weather, that also cover RVs and vehicles constitute part of the people that they would serve, and that did pass the council. So both of these items, the inclement weather and this other issue of also serving the vehicle dwellers, did pass. And so it's not supposed to be a prohibitive thing. It's not a punitive thing. It's supposed to be supports that are given to people who are in the encampments.
Okay, and by the way, in Kentucky, I believe, or Kansas, they're trying to push through a law that it's okay to shoot homeless people if you consider them to be trespassing.
Oh my God.
Intentionally or unintentionally. It's literally a law that they're trying to pass. So I just, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I wanted to
San
respond
Mateo
back to
County is
Carol.
trying to, San Mateo
Arlene,
County is
please.
trying to do a punitive criminal penalties now.
Thank you, Carol. And Betsy, you're still muted, so I'll invite Arlene to follow.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond back to Carol. Carol, I know that everybody that applies for a grant has to have a process for grievances and complaints. It's just that when it leaves the facility, it doesn't land anywhere. Once it is processed in the facility, it doesn't go to a continuum of care where there's an oversight committee. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the individual facilities. I'm talking about all of the facilities.
It should go to the governing body. That should be
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So
if it
let's
goes
see
there,
what
it's a black
happens.
hole, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds. Let's see what happens with the new county board seat, and let's hope that someone is elected that will address that issue.
And I'm not just talking about the election. I'm talking about the mechanics of the continuum of care, who are the administrators of this entire program.
Yeah, I
I'm
understand.
not just talking about elected officials, because elected officials could say yes, 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 but if something that's broken is not fixed, then it's going to just continue on the way that it is. And that's what I'm talking about, the collective, not just the individuals.
Yeah.
Well, I understand. And I'm not sure if the continuum of care would ultimately be, how would you grieve it? Would it be on the federal level, since it's a federal?
No, we're not
continuum of
talking,
care?
we're talking local, just
No, we're talking
supporting.
about
Yeah,
Alameda
no, I'm just saying the
County.
procedure. How would the procedure be?
I'm talking about what the process, once you make your grievance, who does it go to? Who is the administrators? Who is in charge of the building?
Yeah.
Who owns the building? Who are the contractors that are doing the work? And why is the work, if those contractors are not suitable, then they need to go. We need a database of that information, and apparently it doesn't seem to be one. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all of these fires jumping up all over the place.
Yeah, I'm just saying, who does the oversight over that? Is that the
That's
federal?
the point, Carol. There is no one, Carol.
Yeah.
There is
what
no
I'm
one.
saying-
So Gray Panthers
I'm-
went on the record saying we think there needs to be an office, not just an officer, but an office of folks within the continuum of care. In other words, funded by all the money that goes out to these agencies. We want an office, that with people who are going to follow up on the
So
on the individual complaints and take complaints from groups like us that aggregates them from multiple parties who, like you said, feel too vulnerable to figure out a piece of paper to articulate
yeah,
what's not
And
working.
if you're already in crisis, you don't want to go to an elected official. You don't want to go to
obviously.
you're already in crisis. So
Yeah.
my point is that if the system is broken, how can we fix it? And that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking.
So I'm saying that we as advocates with this like DOJ agreement, not even though it doesn't cover this, the settlement agreement, and because this is against the county and the county looks really, really bad, this might be an opportune time to say to the county, this is how you needed to get together. This grievance process, even though this isn't covered under the agreement, this is something you need to be addressing before you're sued again, before you go, before a further complaint is made to the Department of Justice that you're out of compliance. You know, this can be all
Well,
expressed to the monitor.
that's the whole point of this exercise that I'm talking about, Carol.
So
The
there are
fact that I was on a working group with the written standards, and when I invited Betsy, I did the research for her prior to going to the meeting so that she would be able to present her comments. And this is what the comments are about.
So any other Gray Panthers who want to be taking part in follow-up with the county continuum of care, the county offices of homeless services, they actually do have some influence on the city of Berkeley, because I know so many people have beaten their heads against the city of Berkeley's process, city manager, council. That's not the end of the road. So I'm so appreciative for Arlene and Carol. Carol gives us the incredible details of what's happening here that then what finally Arlene has brought to us is a picture of what's going on with our neighbors, which reminds me, I just want to thank Arlene for connecting us up with homeless advocates working group in Oakland, James Van. That's a group that's put out a letter just saying, why is the largest shelter in Oakland have no heat for the last 3 years? The Henry George Center, right? And Arlene got us so that we could send, a little letter of support to HOG, to James Van, their chair, saying, we support you. And wasn't it a public little, did we send it to city council?
They actually did a manifesto. They
Okay.
actually submitted a manifesto specifically to the city of Oakland, which
Yeah.
is where this issue is occurring.
And so again, we're bigger together. We can't, but we gotta, getting letters out is a bit of a bottleneck, but for me, so having someone who's like making all the connections, and then we can craft a short message that has the blessing of East Bay Gray Panthers. In this case, the co-conveners worked on this together, Carol and I and Arlene, and got this basically statement of support for the work of the Homeless Action Working Group in Oakland. Yeah, it felt good. And the one last thing, Rains is gonna close us out. And that's, I think, we just keep doing. Oh, I wanted to say it really is more and more clear that this division between senior affordable housing, this ostensible notion that housing and senior housing is somehow a different category of activity from homelessness and the presence of too many seniors and too many disabled people. They're not, and so the oversight and accountability that for us to, that those two should need to be brought together, at least in our minds, so that we can say why these are not two different bodies, they are the same, are vulnerable. So I know I'll just stop there. So Maria, for example, is now kind of like a insider at, if I can say that, at one of the senior housing communities here in Berkeley. And my hope is we'll be stronger together. I keep saying that. All right, thanks. And then Rains, you're our last announcement. Why don't you finish us out? And we're here till 4. Thanks everyone who stuck around. And take it, Rains.
Thank you, Betsy. And I'll just mention that since we were talking about the rally at Harriet Tubman last year, your Gray Panthers dues help support our being part of that and contributing to help make it happen. And so we appreciate that. And remember to renew. Eventually, we'll get around to sending renewal notices, but the link is on every monthly message. I'm hosting here tomorrow a filmmaker, Sarah Gross,
Where's
who's
here?
Here at Berkeley Co-Housing, with information in the link in chat. She's created a documentary about her mother and mother-in-law, both turning 80, and artists. It's and just conversation, memories, and artwork, exploring the lifelong project of becoming oneself. She's just starting the editing process of this, and she's looking for feedback. And it just sounds like interesting. We'll be showing it here, gathering at 2 p.m. tomorrow at Berkeley Co-Housing on Sacramento Street. And there's an RSVP link in chat. But all are welcome if you're healthy. That's the heart of it. I'll just mention also, I've been participating with some people from New York Gray Panthers that have been part of what's called the Live Oak Project. And some of the people who were the pioneers in changing nursing homes movement from the 70s to 80s and demedicalizing and make them more humane are now saying, how do we go further? How do we change the whole system and all the funding and the regulation and all the different things at different levels nationally in order to let people get care where they want and live where they want and not jump through all these hoops. There's just such, as we were discussing earlier, it's such a patchwork. So they're trying to bring about some systemic change and build awareness on that. And I think there'll be opportunity for us possibly participating with the San Francisco Panthers at organizing some outreach and protests around the Industry of Aging conference, the American Society on Aging's national gathering in San Francisco in a couple months. That's late March. So I'll be looking for people interested in that. I think there's some opportunity for us to do some learning together and some outreach together and showing up in ways that call attention to opportunity to new pathways and new ways and how we need to fix the system to really make the care that everybody needs and make all aspects of life, not just medical care and housing and health and food and a livable life available for all. So that's what I'm excited by. I'm sure I'm on the board of Saging International, which is and with other groups that are looking at different aspects of elderhood. This might be something good for a future meeting. Passageways to elderhood. How can we help people make it easier and learn together and explore together and find greater meaning and purpose in later lives? That's what's exciting to me, and I'm appreciating the Panthers and what's helped get me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rains. And thank you, Carol, for all the details in the chat that you're sending us. Thank you, everyone who was able to get here.
I'd like to put my comment in that I've put in electronically, and that is the concern about people who are living deprived lives, young people who are not able to be taken care of financially, pretty much. It's not just that. People have been made crazy by the situation we're living in. We're not talking about revenge. We're talking about people being so abused that they become chaotic. The wilding that goes on. There's nothing else to do. There's no jobs, and jobs, of course, belong to our owners anyway, so they're kind of an insult. The result is this chaos of trying to grab out and figure out what's going on and give me that. And anyway, it's more than just revenge or poverty, so forth. It is a whole, I mean, what kind of thing, we go to war. We go to war. Without war, there would be no economy in this country. Anyway,
Thank you, Norma.
I said some of that, yeah.
Do you have a first there's it's like we always start a conversation just as we're about to end.
I
would
didn't want to
love,
start that. We could do it another
no, but
time.
what I want to do is it's an ongoing conversation that I'm sure we all have feelings about. So
Bye,
much
guys.
the war and capitalism, the confusion, the chaos. So I would like to just take a moment to breathe. I would like to know if people would like to meet. Some of us who could meet in person, I don't want to exclude anybody, but if you're able to meet at the Vault Cafe, and I'm just checking the calendar, that let's just work on finding a way that some of us could get together in between times. Of course, you can always call me or other people on the board, but my personal cell is 609, I'm sorry, is, no, 510-809-7252. And that's my personal cell. We also have a Gray Panthers number. I see that Maria wanted to make one more announcement. I think she's gone. Oh no, there she is. But I'm actually going to close this meeting. I'll try to put up a slideshow if not after this. No, I can't. I'm sorry. I was hoping to have one at the beginning, but next meeting we'll have a slideshow. But you know, we don't just have to have our speaker meetings on Zoom. We can also meet in person. So let me know if you would like to do that. I'll send out an invitation if anyone else has a time and a place that they'd like to invite people to. Let's get that out and, you know, keep plotting and planning and prowling and growling and doing
Well,
all
and
the work.
mostly keep being grateful and self-caring and caring of everyone else. Thank you so much, Betsy. Thank you, everyone. Nothing but mercy and courage. All right. Thank you.
Did you want to put your number in, Maria, if you're looking for
Oh yes, I
help
will
with
do
taking
that to
food or
everyone. Thank you.
to
Thank you.
people? And I'm hoping, Norma, because we lost Dave a little while ago, I'm hoping, Norma, you'll have a poem for us to close us out. But
Why
first,
would I have a poem unprepared? No
okay,
way.
then I have to, while you're checking chat, Robert, I know, Robert, our stalwart treasurer, I'm thinking we're going to have to pass on that, Robert, unless it's an urgent announcement. But let's plan for our board and member meeting, which should be in 2 weeks. We'll meet on Zoom again to do business, to, you know, the administrative details. Can it wait till then, Robert, or do you have another announcement?
Oh, no, what I was going to say is that I got a couple of emails about the senior vote project, and I'm gonna forward it to everybody.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robert. Are we able to close this first meeting of 2024 knowing that we're brimming over brimming over?
I could sing you something. Arise, ye prisoners of starvation. Arise, ye wretched of the earth. This is the song of the Communist Party.
And there's more to it.
There's more to it.
Thank you. And let's enjoy each other while we're doing this. All right. All good? All right. Thank you all for sticking it out. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all you're doing in the world, and vibes of appreciation everywhere. I will see you, if not in 1 month, then in 2 weeks, or maybe even less. Be well.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Julia, thanks for coming. And Carol. I'm going to experiment with the slideshow. So if anyone doesn't mind, I'm going to share. I'm going to slides. No, that's not what I mean. I don't. I want to share. Nope. Share a portion of the screen. No. Let me cancel that. Okay, so. Dang. Rains, is that Tim? Come on in. Rains, Tim's here and Maya was looking for you earlier. Hey, help yourself, sit down. Warm yourself up.
Furniture comes.
Some of it's been here for quite a while, but
Yeah.
this is the new. Just to have old, I know it's old, but I love this wood. I love it.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about these chairs.
Yeah, they've been around a while.
These are like, this is imperial style.
I love that. It's actually pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
You'd have to not,
What about this one?
it's really comfortable.
This one?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you can sit cross-legged in it. All right, I'm trying to figure out why I would like to show a slideshow. And for some reason, it's like, what happens? How do I show it as a slideshow? Okay, so we're just gonna, now I need to go, come on, stop.
What's that?
Do you know how to?
13-inch?
I'm lucky, yeah. I need to show a slideshow in Zoom. Do you know how to do that?
In Zoom?
Yeah, there's a way to share the screen.
Wait.
Oh, stop recording. Let me do that.
Share.